Up, up, up. Welcome to Vintage Garage. We have another treat this week. We're going to take a field trip to the SVRA Spring Fling at Roebling Road near Savannah, Georgia. It's the first round of the North America SRCC Championship for Sports 2000 cars. At Roebling Road, we plan to get interviews with some of the drivers, scenes from around the paddock, and plenty of in-car video. So stay tuned. We have a full show today. Glad you're here. Our trip to Roebling Road begins as we head south on I-95 and cross Lake Marion just north of Santee, South Carolina. It's at this point in the trip when we put the theme song to Vintage Garage on the CD player and put it on continuous play for the rest of the trip. We're now heading west on Highway 80 through the town of Pooler, Georgia. The track is just a few miles ahead. The entrance to the track is just ahead. Straight ahead, off in the distance, we see the tower at the start-finish line. The registration building is the small building to the right. That's our first stop. There's no line, so we head up to register, where Kim checks us in. She does a great job.
Here is your free stuff. Here is your schedule and your event information and your entry list.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cars are on the track for a Thursday test day, so we have a short wait to cross the track. When the test session ends, we can cross the track and we're quickly on our way into the paddock. Well, we arrived at Savannah in good shape. We had no trouble on the trip down. We had a nice uneventful tow. And we got a good spot in the paddock. We're right against the fence, right near turn 5. This will be a good place to photograph the action. We unroll the side canopy on the A-van to set up a small hospitality area. And then begin the work of setting up the main canopy off the side of the trailer. After the main canopy is raised, we put up our satellite dish so we can watch TV at night. It's simply a pair of rabbit ears that we mounted to a 10-foot piece of conduit. We run the coax down the conduit and into the TV. We simply rotate the conduit to tune in our favorite stations. Now that our base camp is set up, we need to take the Lola up to the tech shed for tech inspection. Over here is Rick Hurd. He's working tech today. He's doing a great job. He has to know a little bit about every kind of car. It's really a tough job. Here's Bill Hurd checking over the Datsun 280Z of Mike Goldberg, while Bob Williams checks over the Taiga SC of John and Phyllis Nelson. It's now time for the first feature race of the weekend. One of the activities that's been underway today is the driver orientation program for new drivers. We're over at turn 5 as the pace car leads the field around for the start of the DOP feature race. The pace car has pulled off and we're now into the race. It looks like everyone's having a good time. Most of these drivers and cars will continue on and participate in the weekend's events. It's now Friday morning at Roebling Road and we're looking forward to the day.
With other cars that are
the day begins as Peter Krause holds a driver's meeting and introduces the SVRA officials.
Somebody who is moving all the time, and introduce him to you. That's Jack Worley. Next is Carl Jensen, who is the competition director. And the chief steward of this event is Bud Merrill. He's a fixture at SVRA.
After the driver's meeting, we run back to our paddock spot and get the Lola ready for our qualifying session. Before we go on track for our qualifying session, let's take a look at a track map of Roebling Road to get our bearings. After that, we'll suit up, get in the car, and head out on the track for a hot lap at Roebling Road. Our hot lap at Roebling Road begins as we start down the front straightaway. We cross the start-finish line. The starter stand is immediately on our left. This straightaway is essentially flat. We accelerate the whole way down the straightaway and enter the braking zone to turn 1. Turn 1 and 2 is a combination turn that makes a 180-degree turn to the right. We take it as two parts. We let the car drift out to the outer part in the center of the turn and then bring the car back in to apex late at turn 2. We accelerate to turn 3 and shift to high gear right before turn 3, a 90-degree left-hander. We can usually make up track position by taking turn 3 flat out and braking hard for turn 4. Turn 4 is just slightly less than a 180-degree turn to the right. Turn 5 is also sort of a two-part turn. It tightens up on exit, and you have to be very careful not to run off the road on the exit. Then there's a short downhill chute that leads to turn 6 and 7. Turn 6 and 7 can be taken as one continuous long 180-degree turn to the right. As you exit turn 7, you start up a short chute, and turn 8 is a flag station at the top of the hill. That leads you to turn 9, a flat-out right-hander. That leads to turn 10, a fast right-hander that brings you out onto the pit straight. If you exit turn 10 wide and end up in the grass, you want to be careful to keep the car on the grass and just let it slow to a stop. That brings us back to the start-finish line where our hot lap will end. Our hot lap at Roebling Road begins as we start down the front straightaway. We cross the start-finish line. The starter stand is immediately on our left. This straightaway is essentially flat. We accelerate the whole way down the straightaway and enter the braking zone to turn 1. Turn 1 and 2 is a combination turn that makes a 180-degree turn to the right. We take it as two parts. We let the car drift out to the outer part in the center of the turn and then bring the car back in to apex late at turn 2. We accelerate to turn 3 and shift to high gear right before turn 3, a 90-degree left-hander. We can usually make up track position by taking turn 3 flat out and braking hard for turn 4. Turn 4 is just slightly less than a 180-degree turn to the right. Turn 5 is also sort of a two-part turn. It tightens up on exit, and you have to be very careful not to run off the road on the exit. Then there's a short downhill chute that leads to turn 6 and 7. Turn 6 and 7 can be taken as one continuous long 180-degree turn to the right. As you exit turn 7, you start up a short chute, and turn 8 is a flag station at the top of the hill. That leads you to turn 9, a flat-out right-hander. That leads to turn 10, a fast right-hander that brings you out onto the pit straight. If you exit turn 10 wide and end up in the grass, you want to be careful to keep the car on the grass and just let it slow to a stop. That brings us back to the start-finish line, where our hot lap will end. We made another 10 laps and had a good qualifying session. We leave the track now and head back to our paddock spot. We'll change into our shorts and walk Einstein around and shoot some video of the other qualifying sessions. We're now at turn 5, right behind our truck, for the start of the Group 1 qualifying session. The Group 2 qualifying session is next for the open wheel cars. We're now at the end of pit lane for the start of the Friday afternoon all-BMC race for cars with motors produced by the British Motor Corporation. It's a mix of MGs and Austin Healey's, but we also see an Elva, a Lotus, and an Austin Mini Cooper in the field. The race is handicapped with fastest car starting last, and it looks like they're having a great time. After the race, we'll walk over to timing and scoring to pick up our timesheet. On the way, we'll stop and interview one of our favorite drivers.
Hi, my name is John Nelson. This is Phyllis Nelson. She's the car owner and crew chief of our 1982 Taiga SC. I've driven it in the Midwest at Heartland Park at Topeka, Kansas, Gateway International in St. Louis, and Hallett, Oklahoma. Up front, this car has ventilated disc rotors. The car has dual master cylinders adjustable for brake bias from the cockpit. The motor is a 2-liter Ford Pinto type motor. It's a single overhead cam with a 2-barrel carburetor. This engine was manufactured by Curtis Farley in Kansas City, Missouri. The gearbox is a Hewland Mark 9 with 4 forward speeds.
Well, we're now over at timing and scoring, where Neil Harmon and John Mitchell are running the timing and scoring desk. These guys do a great job. At the end of the day, food and beverages were provided to all of the participants, and they were much appreciated.
Other than that, it was great. You guys will wake up tonight.
It's now Saturday morning, and the weather continues to be perfect. We have a qualifying session in the morning, a qualifying race later in the afternoon, and we're looking forward to the day. Drivers and crews are getting their cars ready for the day. We'll walk around and see what they're up to. Morning activities include race prep on the Donovitz MGB, the collection of cars belonging to Harvey Siegel and Lee Brand, and the Porsche 906 of Henry Payne. Next door, Jeff Menon warms up the Morris Cooper S, and Robert Hibden prepares his Brabham BT14. We're now over near turn 6, looking back towards turn 5 for the Saturday morning qualifying session for Group 1 cars, and the action is hot. We're now over at Flag Station 6, where Judy Corbett and Ted Michaelbrink of the Buccaneer Region SCCA are running the station. Flagging this weekend has been first rate. The Monoposto cars are next on the track for their qualifying session. We see the morning qualifying sessions are ending. We'll walk over and visit with Mike Muckle to learn about his cars.
This car is a 1965 Turner Mark III. It's been a race car all of its life. The only road miles that this car has done were from the dealership, which was in Pennsylvania. It was a Morgan Turner dealership at that time, and it was bought and driven from the dealership to the race prep shop, and I bought it from the second owner and ran it last year. The motor in this car is a 1500 Ford non-crossflow or pre-crossflow motor, twin Weber carburetors, electronic ignition. This is a 5-pound Halon fire bottle automatic system that I installed when I bought the car. This activates the bottle, and it's a requirement when you race to have this within reach of the driver, of course. This is one of my other cars. A 1962 Lotus Super 7. This car has a 1500 Ford motor in it, twin Weber carburetors. It has a dry sump lubrication system in it.
After lunch, we're back in the Lola, heading to the grid for our Saturday afternoon qualifying race. As the pace car pulls off at the end of turn 10, we're concentrating on having the car in the right gear and making a good start. We see the starter wave the green flag and the race is on. Several of the cars behind us have more horsepower, and a couple pass us on the start. One of them is a slow Lotus 23, who we have to quickly pass or he'll be holding us up the whole race. We need to retake him before turn 4 so we can put distance between us before returning to the front straight for lap 2. Up ahead, Robert Hibden in the red Lotus 23 is a bit faster and we can't quite catch him, and we spend 10 laps trying unsuccessfully to do so. Nevertheless, we have a good run and the car is qualified for the Sunday feature race. We're now back over at the fence in turn 5 to watch the Mike Stott Payne Weber Dixie 150 Enduro. After the Enduro ends, we have time to interview John Harkness and learn about his car.
This car is a 1963 Form car, Formula V, and 63 was the first year they were allowed in the SCCA, so this is quite an historic car. The first owner of the car lives in Texas, and I've actually been in contact with him. We've exchanged emails, and he even sent me photographs of when he first built the car. It was bright red at the time, but it's been changed several times since. The motor in the car is from an early 60s Volkswagen Beetle. The major difference is that they're turned around. Normally the engine's hung off the back and the transaxle is toward the front, but we turn them around. One of the other big differences is this exhaust system, which is pretty fancy but gets us a couple horsepower. This is probably running 50 horsepower and the stock engine's 40.
It's now Saturday evening and we're at the dinner provided for all the drivers and crews. The food is great and it's much appreciated. Over here, Joyce Reagan has put out a nice table of desserts. It's now Sunday morning at Roebling Road. Feature day. The weather is perfect. There are warm-ups in the morning and our feature race is at 1:30. We're at turn 3 now to watch the morning warm-ups. After the warm-ups, there was time for a group photo of the SRCC drivers and crews. Left to right are Vaughn, Pam Smith, crew chief of the number 84 Lola, Einstein, Amos Smith, head wrench on the number 84, John Nelson, and Phyllis Nelson, crew chief of the number 18 Taiga. We're now on the false grid as Grid Chief Wes Clapp sends the Group 8 cars off for the start of the first Edelbrock feature race of the day. After the cars leave the grid, we'll put our camera on the pit wall to record the start of the race. We're now back at turn 3 as the Group 8 feature race continues. The action is hot. Next up is the Edelbrock feature race for Group 1 cars. We're back in the Lowland heading up to the false grid for our feature race. We have a good starting position. It's time to go, and we enter the pits through the opening in the pit wall and head out onto the track. Once again, we exit turn 10 for the start of the race, with cars behind us that are faster on the straight. Paul Flowers is just ahead of us in the green Elva Mark 7, and Lee Bryan is alongside in the yellow Elva Mark 7. We see the green flag and the feature race is underway. Again, the Lotus 23s pass us. Flowers goes off in turn 1 in a cloud of smoke. And we try to put our favorite move on the green Lotus entering turn 4. It doesn't work this time, and we end up stuck behind him. On lap 2, John Nelson goes by in the Taiga SC82 to take over first in our class. On lap 5, we're running behind Nelson and the green Lotus and trying to figure out a way by. The race reaches a climax as the Taiga has a rear wheel nut failure and we inherit the class lead. The final 5 laps were uneventful, and that's the way our race ended. We had a great time, and we head back to the pits. After that, it was time to break camp, load up the Lola, and head for the road. On the way out, we swing by to say goodbye to our friends. So long, Laura. See you at Mosport. Then we're out of the track and back on the road. We reflect on the weekend and what a great time we had, and look forward to the next event. That's it for this week at Vintage Garage. I hope you enjoyed the trip to Roebling Road. I know we did. Next week, it's back to work in the shop. We'll set up our nickel plating tanks and begin plating the suspension links and other parts for the Titan Mark 9. In addition, we'll take a field trip to Lincoln Speedway for the ARDC midget races. It should be a lot of fun. So until next week, thanks for coming. Glad you were here. Keep the shiny side up. We'll see you next week. If you'd like more information about any of the projects we've worked on today, please visit our website at www.vintagegarage.com. There's a link to our email address on the website. Please email us. We'd like to hear from you. Till next time, keep the shiny side up. Thanks for coming. See you next week.